After the airplane exercise, we talk about the importance of mindsets and how mindsets control the way we think. So we talk a little bit about the brain and how the brain operates in a world that is filled with a lot of information. In a world where you have access to hundreds of thousands of bits of information a minute, we have developed a brain that is very good in scanning information and using only that is essential for you to survive. So we constantly, in order to avoid sensory overload, we are scanning the environment and only using information that is applicable. So otherwise, if you make sense of everything that comes through your senses, you would go crazy. You would have sensory overload. That's why you create mindsets, which are ways of looking at the world only using minimum energy, or it's a principle of economics, doing more with less. So that's why you create mindsets. It's editing the world for its essentials. How do we do that? Most of the time it's going to be through experience, through learning, through habit, through what we have learned, social modeling, what we have seen other people doing, and we start to create that, what we call mindset. And mindsets, for one, are extremely powerful and extremely helpful, because if we didn't have one, we would be constantly not knowing how to react to things and information in our world. We wouldn't be able to function. Just imagine that every time somebody gives their hand to you for you to shake, you don't know what that person means. You have to go through deep cognitive processes to try to understand what that person is doing. It would be just crazy for everything you had to go through that process. So what do? You create a mindset so you know exactly how to react depending on the situation that you're going through. Okay? So in that matter, mindsets are very, very helpful. They help you to survive with minimum effort. On the other hand, mindsets can control the way we think, the way we act, the way we behave, and not allow us to adapt to new circumstances, because the world is changing, and as we saw before, the world is changing more and more, and if we don't adapt our mindsets, we will be caught up in old ways of doing things, in old habits, and we will not be able to adapt. So gotta be very careful with mindsets. One example that I gave in this class was of John Akers, who was the CEO of IBM in the 80s, when IBM was very well known for producing mainframes, and that was his mindset. So see the mindset as neuron connections. Okay, so in the beginning, John Akers comes as the new CEO of one of the most powerful companies in the nation, and he starts selling mainframes, and all of a sudden you sell 100,000 mainframes, and your neurons starts to create connections. Say this mainframe business is good stuff, and then years go by and he sells $1 billion in mainframes, and the connections start to become stronger, and you create a mindset around it. But what was the problem in that time was that mainframes were becoming discontinuous and PCs were emerging in the market. But in John Akers' mindset, there was still a lot of productivity that they could gain from mainframes, and he wanted to invest more in mainframes, and he started to put the whole new world of PCs aside. He almost tanked the company, and he was sacked, alright, because again he couldn't adapt his mindset to a new reality. So extremely powerful to constantly question your mindsets, because first of all, they can be wrong. So here are some characteristics of mindset. So the first characteristic of a mindset, it includes things that you think are true, and you think that they are true because of your experience or what you have learned, but things that may not necessarily actually be true. So that's why we have to be very careful with them. Mindsets allow us to predict the future. So we create these mental rules in our minds, and these are called if-then rules. After so much of your experience, you know that if you do A, B will happen. Okay? But again, if you do A, B will happen in a certain context. And the context nowadays is changing very fast. Therefore, this rule should be questioned on a frequent basis, especially in the business world. And mindsets are simpler than the thing that they're trying to explain. Again, a mindset is a summary of what is out there. A mindset is the essential of what you need to know about something. Therefore, they do not represent totality of reality. They just present a small fraction of reality, and that's why, again, we need to be very careful with it. 4 general problems associated with mindsets. 4 general problems associated with mindsets. First of all, they can be wrong. You could be fed information that is wrong, and somebody in class said, well, but sometimes not necessarily, I don't agree with you. They can be partially wrong, but think about it. The world is not flat, and we have believed that the world was flat for many, many years. Not only that, we have also believed in the 1400s that there were monsters in the middle of the ocean, and that's why they wouldn't get on their boats and explore the different the deep sea oceans, because they believed that there were sea monsters there that would eat their boats. Therefore, but try to bring that to reality as well. And again, and we look at John Anchors. His mindset was not totally wrong, but was somewhat wrong. There were, of course, there are degrees of wrongness. But again, mindsets can be wrong. How do you check that? They can be improperly used. You can have a mindset that represents some part of reality very well, but not other parts of reality. They can be so mindsets can be improperly used. Again, when you have a if-then rule that applies very well for one situation, but may not apply the same way to another situation. And that is very well explained when we are trying to do business with other cultures. For example, you have some rules that function very well in your culture, but when you go abroad, that rule doesn't matter anymore. Rules of communication, rules of interaction with other people, etc. And mindsets can be fed by incorrect information. Mindsets can be fed by incorrect information. Extremely powerful. What kind of information is actually feeding your mindset? You have to pay attention to it. And we have discussed in class that most of the time, what kind of information do we seek? What kind of information do we go after? Most of the time we are seeking information that is reassuring of the things that we already know, and not information that confronts our way of thinking. Okay? So we got to be very careful with the kind of information that we are scanning from the environment to feed our mindsets. There is one very recognized ego defense mechanism that's called denial. There is information out there, there is negative feedback telling us that whatever is happening to us is not necessarily adaptive, and we completely deny that information. Okay, so we have to be very careful about the quality of feedback that we receive. Another problem associated with mindset is that we very rarely analyze its effectiveness. We very rarely measure if our mindset is serving its purposes or not. Sometimes we are even lied about it. You know, you have your your performance assessment with your boss, and most of the time they will just cover up the not so good things that you're doing.